everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our Paving Pathways webinar with North Carolina Hmong Women Association in collaboration with Bunning. So today's agenda includes the welcome, introduction to our speaker, and interview questions and answers, and then we're going to close out after that. So the purpose of our webinar is to expose Hmong students and the community to different career opportunities and enrich them by providing valuable resources. Our objectives include identifying and addressing gaps within our community regarding education, health, other social determinants, and exposing our Hmong students to different career opportunities and just enriching our community by providing valuable information and resources.
We are currently collaborating with Bunning, which is a nonprofit organization from Colorado. They actually reached out to our organization after reviewing some of our webinars, and they wanted us to create a subset of webinars focused on Hmong mental health providers to spread awareness about the profession. Bunning is hosting an event in Colorado on June 8th through the 9th. It is titled Hmong Women Lead, Pioneering Mental Health Equity for Hmong Women. The objective with this summit is to creating a safe space and environment for like-minded Hmong women to come together and have some of these difficult conversations. If you're interested in this event, which is free to everyone to attend, you can register for the event with the link on the slide. With that, I want to introduce our first speaker for this subset of webinars. Introducing Mao Zong today. She is a social worker. She's a clinical specialist at Reaching Solution, and she received her master's degree in social work from Winthrop University and her bachelor's degree in social work from University of North Carolina at Charlotte. She's currently a licensed clinical social worker associate, and she is certified in rapid therapy and unification therapy. She's also currently working on another certification, the Parent-Child Interaction Therapy certification. She works in hospital setting as a social worker assigned to the neonatal intensive care unit and mother-baby unit. In the past, she has been a crisis counselor who worked with runaway, foster, homeless, and behavioral children. She's been a social worker since 2014 and has loved every piece of it. And she welcomes everybody here to learn more about being a social worker and clinical therapist. So we'll pause here for a second and just let Mao say hi and introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Mal, and I am happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me to be part of this webinar and this amazing program.
Next, we will move into our interview question and answer session. We split these questions up into different categories with some background questions, just getting to know Mao, education experience questions, more identity questions, and then some closing questions. So the first question we have here for you, Mao, is to explain your job titles and associated roles and tasks. And if you could also elaborate on the roles of a social worker versus a licensed clinical social worker or therapist.
So being a social worker, you do a lot of case management work, and case management is basically you look at the case and you help the family with resources. Sometimes homelessness, you help them find shelter. Sometimes they need help with food, so you find programs to provide food. So that's part of the social work world. There's so much more to it than just providing resources. You also hear about Child Protective Service social work, and so they also or APS, Adult Protective Social Workers. There's just it's a very broad profession. And then the clinical piece of it is you do have to apply for your clinical license in social work to become a clinical therapist. And that is what I'm currently doing now also. And that is a whole different world of social work also. Being a clinical therapist, you do the therapy work. You sit down with clients and you do the one-on-one session with them, talking about their emotions, mental health, and anything else. And the good thing about being a social worker is that you are able to provide the resource outside of just the therapy piece. And sometimes families, they need a therapist, but they also need that social piece, extra support outside of the home. It's kind of like a dual profession.
Thank you for sharing. And I liked how you emphasize that being a social worker is more than just providing resources. Let's move on to our next question. See, could you tell us more about your journey to becoming a social worker? What inspired you to pursue a career as a social worker?
Yeah. So my journey into social work, I think it was because I love it so much. It was pretty smooth for me. I graduate within my time that I needed to, and then when I did my master's, it's the same thing. I didn't really have much struggle, and I think a big piece of it is because I love it so much. I love it so much that I am willing to study. I'm willing to write the papers. I'm willing to do the research, and so the work itself to get the degree was great. But I think the hard piece is outside of the schoolwork, because going to school and being a student is great, but you also have to have a social life and you also have to have that balance. And I didn't. I didn't have the balance of a college student, because I was so focused in school. Um, but yeah, that's me in a nutshell with my journey in social work. So what inspired me to be a social worker? In the very beginning, very young age, since elementary up until high school, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I love teaching. I enjoy teaching, and I really enjoy um, sharing what I've learned. And I also learned that teachers don't make that much money. Social worker doesn't either. But I noticed that the one piece that I really like about teaching is that I get to know my students and I really get to know who they are and what their struggle, like the struggles they go through at home. And I found that even with tutoring um, students, I find that there are things that I wish I could do more for the child aside from teaching. And so that's why I went into social work, because I want to do more than just teaching the child the things that I know. I want to be able to provide the resource or provide the help that they may need outside of the school system or outside of wherever it is that I meet them at. And so I decided to go into social work because I feel like I could do more and I could provide more for the family, even if it's just a little or a lot, because we just never know how much we touch a patient or a client with the work that we do in this field.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And I love how passionate you are about your career. It really is inspiring.
Thank you.
A follow-up question. It seems like you work a lot with young populations and young clients. Was there something specific that kind of pulled you towards that population?
With the elderly patient, what I enjoy is that you really get to see somebody who lived a whole life and then they're at their end and you are there for them at the very end. And it breaks my heart to see my patient pass or my clients pass. And I can't handle that. And so I wanted to work with children because I can see that they can grow and that I have impacted them a piece of it. And so that's why I like children, because I get to meet them when they're struggling, and I feel like I'm able to save them, and not just me. Of course, they save themselves, but I'm able to provide a piece of me in them, and it's like planting a seed and watching it grow. And so I think that's why I like children so much. Working in the neonatal intensive care, it breaks my heart because I see so many babies that pass away, and they fight so hard, but sometimes their diagnosis or their medical condition takes over, and so we have to let them go. But I am also able to be there for the parents and support their parents and let them know that this is a process that I will be next to them, and I will be right by their side and walk them through. And so I'm also able to find resources to help with funeral fundings and assist them with paying some of the cost and providing funeral homes, calling the funeral home. So it's just a lot of things that it makes me feel better, even though the baby did pass. And so I think that's why I like the children.
I think that really aligns with your beginning passions of wanting to be a teacher too. The phrase you use, planting a seed. Um, One thing that you tell the child or tell these young minds can make a lasting impact throughout their lives. So that is true.
Yeah.
Next question here is, what does a typical day as a social worker look like for you?
Yeah, so there is no typical day in social work. You just never know what comes through the door, and you just never know what your client or your patient's going through. And so there is no typical day. Maybe there might be some like the same way of documenting or the same way of protocol, but everything is so different, because every family is so different. It's always a journey. And so everything, I feel like there's just not a same day in the social work world.
That is a really valid point that every day is going to be different because you never know what's going to walk in the door. Do you start off your day in the neonatal intensive care unit or are you in private practice first?
Yeah, so I start off at the hospital first. So my day is from 8 to 8. So I start off at the hospital first, and currently I am in the neonatal intensive care unit to train the new social workers. And then after I'm done training them, I return back to my OB unit, which is the mother baby unit. So I've been working in the neonatal intensive care unit for about 5 years now, and then the mother baby about 2 years. And so I've been kind of back and forth. And so pretty much we go into the hospital, we see our consult, or we see how many patients are coming on our list of to-dos, and we go and talk to them, assess and see what they need and what kind of resources we could provide. And then after that, we come back and we document. That's kind of the everyday thing. But again, it's one of those things where every case is so different. You just never know. Sometimes they ask you, how do I take custody of my grandchild? Sometimes it's like, oh, you need to make a child protective service report because the mother is so high she can't even hold her baby. And so everything and anything that could happen happens. So I've kind of walked through it all. Sometimes others are like, oh, I don't want my baby, you could adopt my baby, and I'm not doing anything. And so then I have to get involved and help find a placement for the child. So being a hospital social work, it's a very unique place and I love it. And then after I'm done with the hospital, then I go to my clinical therapy place, and I go and sit down with my with my clients, and I talk to them and see how their day went or how their week are going, and help them just kind of go through their emotions. Some of my clients, they're younger, so I call them the little emotions that you're going through, or big emotions. And then sometimes I have clients who are adults, and sometimes I have clients who come in as couple therapy. And so it's just kind of whichever client that come through the door also, then we kind of talk about what topic or what goals they want to achieve in therapy. And so it's much calmer than the hospital. So it's much calmer, and then I get to go home and rest, and then again the next day. So very adventurous job.
Seems like you need to be very flexible with your job.
Yes, yes. And my husband is a very supportive husband. In this field, you need to have very strong support and having somebody else to recognize that, hey, you need a self-care day. And he is very, very good at that.
Oh, I love to hear that you have support because I know that it can be very taxing with what you do, and it is so interesting to hear about like your day and the different like areas that you work in. So that's very eye-opening.
What is fulfilling about your job?
For the hospital is seeing that I call them my babies. They're not, they're my patients' babies, but I call them my babies, making sure that they go home to a safe home. And there have been so many times that I have talked with Child Protective Service and beg and say this baby will die if the baby goes home with this mother. And so I've been subpoenaed to go to court to even say that in front of a judge. And it is a very rewarding job when you know that your babies are going home safe. And it's also amazing that you work with a team who also feels the same way and also back you up when you or the nurse see that this baby is not going home to a safe place. And I think that's very fulfilling, knowing that your baby is safe, and you are the one to make that decision, because that is a very big piece of my job, is discharge planning and making sure that the child safely discharged home. And so that's the hospital piece. And then for the clinical piece, I think the most rewarding thing is seeing your client grow and seeing that they are stronger than what they thought when they came in, and seeing that they are able to overcome the stressor that they brought with them the first day of therapy. And so that's very enjoyable and very fulfilling.
What you just shared just really emphasizes the impact that you're doing as a social worker. And you see the positive effects of you kind of advocating for your patient is really rewarding, fulfilling. And then as for the private practice side, where you see your patients in clinic, continuity of care, like being able to see them again and see them grow, is really fulfilling. So thank you for sharing that with us. Our next question here is, what educational path did you take to become a social worker?
I went straight into social work all the way through, so I have not yet done anything different. I think in the future, if I continue my education, I'll probably change into psychology. But with social work, there's so many paths to become a social worker, but there's also only one path to become a social worker. And what I mean by that is with your bachelor's or your undergrad, you could pretty much be anything and graduate with anything with your undergrad, and then get your master's in social work and then become a social worker. And I'll be very honest that if I could turn back time, I would probably go into child development and get my bachelor in that instead, and then get my master's in social work. And the reason why I say that is because the bachelor level, your undergrad level for social work, at the end, even when you graduate, you can't really find a job. It's really hard to find a job in the BSW world. And you have to immediately, it feels like you have to, you don't have to, but it feels like you have to immediately go back to school to get your master's. And the master program, if you have your undergrad in social work, you could just finish it in 1 year. And I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of bachelor level social worker does that, because they get to do the advanced standing, which only takes a year to do. And then you could become a social worker. But it you've only focused on social work. And that's why I mentioned, like, if you do your bachelor in a different field, you get to add that onto the social work also. And then, of course, there's the doctorate program of social work. Basically, if you are interested in research or owning your own business and doing your own, having your own business, then you'll do the doctorate of social work, or being a professor, you'll do your PhD in social work. So that what I took was just the undergrad in social work, and then my master's in social work, and then now my clinical social work. But I think the biggest thing to become a social worker is to get your master's in social work, and it'll cover you.
Thank you for being so honest about that. I know it's relatable though. I feel like a lot of, because I, went into STEM, and a lot of like the bachelor's level is like you sort of have to continue. So definitely getting something useful and then a master's in it is a way to go. And thank you for sharing that and just like being honest about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of like do-overs. If I could tell younger me to do over, I'm like, don't do the BSW. Do something else, because you could get your master's later. But I would suggest that to any other younger students out there who is interested in the social work world. Do something that you're interested in with your undergrad, and then get your master's in social work.
Do you have advice for people aspiring to study and work in this field?
If you love it, then you won't regret it. That's the one advice. And if you don't love caring for people for free, you will hate social work. And the reason why I say for free is because that's what we get paid for. We get paid nothing to be a social worker. Because if we are doing great, then we wouldn't need to, like me, we wouldn't need to get our clinical social work and having to work 2 jobs to survive now in nowadays and age. And so I think that if you love social work, and you could just breathe social work, I guess I'm one of them, then you'll like it. I have a lot of coworkers who say that they regret going to social work. And the reason why I'm honest about that is because social work is a very, very hard field. You don't get recognized for all the work that you do, and other people get recognized before you do. And that's just kind of a piece of the world of social work. And if you're the type of people who like to be recognized or who likes to do something big and be applauded for, then social work may be very hard for you, because a lot of the time the things that we do is very behind the door, and we just silently applaud and silently pat our back, because that's just part of our field. Nobody really notice us.
Well, I certainly appreciate you and all other social workers. I am actually interested. Would you recommend people who want to get their master's in social work to get another master's at the same time, sort of like a dual degree? Because I see so many people in my field, so I'm in public health. I see so many people who get both like their MPH and like their master's in social work, which I find really interesting.
Yeah, so I think that that's a really good question. The reason why I say that is because the master level of social work, after you graduate with your social work, you're like a bird. You can fly anywhere, because the field is so broad, and the master program is kind of where it stops. Well, aside from getting your clinicals, but if you don't want to be a clinical therapist, depending on jobs, nowadays a lot of jobs want a clinical therapist, a clinical social worker in their name, so LCSW. But in the state of North Carolina, where we're from, you could just get your MSW and you could get a job. And so, in regards to a dual, two MSW, or I mean, two master programs, I would say it's up to you, and it is really up to what your goals are. Because if your goal is to be in public health, but also be able to um, provide like, because public health, you can also provide resources too. So if you're wanting to do like some clinical work, like therapy work, and but you also enjoy the public health piece, then I say, yeah, you would take the path of a master program clinical social worker, and then go the master program, finish that, and then go apply for your clinicals. But you could also be a clinical therapist by being a counselor or by being a psychologist. So there's just so many out there, and I think it's very, very individualized. So it goes back down to your passion, what you like. And the social work, the MSW, the master program is so broad. After that, or after you graduate, you could pretty much work anywhere. There are social workers who work at Bank of America. There's social workers who work at the hospital, who work at with the government. It's such a broad profession that you can jump from place to place, and there's always a position for you.
Thank you for sharing. I love how it could be so versatile.
Our next question is asking about resources that you can recommend for Hmong students who want to learn more about the social work profession?
Yeah, the resources, if you want to go into the world of social work, you could just look up at your local universities and see what their credentials are. The NASW, National Association of Social Work, they have guidelines, and it's very detailed on their website also. But also the universities that you are interested in, just look at their social work program, and it will line out on there also. But the social work world, you write a lot of papers, and you do a lot of research, a lot of researching on like families or empowerment, if I could say that. It's just so many stuff, very people study.
What are some important skills to have in your career?
I feel like listening to your intuition and listening to your gut. That's something, if you are skillful at that, you would be a great social worker. Because, and the reason why I say that is because there are a lot of people out there that will lie to you, and they will make it look so perfect that if you don't listen to your gut feeling, you're not going to catch what you are there for. And I've seen it over and over again, and I am definitely a person who listens to her gut. And there was this one time during an interview, they asked, what is your pet peeve? And my biggest pet peeve is liars. And so I pick it up so quick. And so when parents are lying to me, or when the children are lying to me, I can tell that they are. And sometimes calling them out on it really help fix the problem too, because we need to get to the bottom of the problem in order to solve it.
Our next question is, how do you navigate cultural nuances in your work, especially when working with the Hmong community, if you have?
Yeah, so I think that our values as being a Hmong woman, or just being Hmong, our values is very different from the Western ways. And I see it over and over again at the hospital. There will be times when I have Hmong patients, and they come in and they don't leave. They're always there, and it's great support. But then the doctors and them, when they start to get worried about the visitor, and they start to worry about what's happening at home, and so it's very different. And the belief also, sometimes they the belief itself is just very different. And sometimes they're like, oh, do they need prayers? And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. It just depends on the belief of the family. And so I had to educate a lot at the hospital about the Hmong people and what we believe in, and our diets, and what we do, and what's normal and what's not normal. And so I'll give an example. I had a couple where they came in. The father speaks some English, the mother speaks no English, so she speaks only Hmong. And their baby was in the NICU. And so yeah, in our Hmong culture, if the husband is very loving and caring, he won't let the woman hold the baby for too long, because for us women, we shouldn't be carrying anything heavy. And so sometimes the baby could become heavy to the mother if the mother holds the baby for too long. And so um, the person who was caring for the family noticed that the father was holding the baby most of the time. And the mother doesn't really talk much. The father usually talked to the doctor, and he usually refused the interpreter stick. And so they're concerned for domestic violence or emotional abuse. And so they call me in to talk about that. And I explained to them the culture, and how it could come off as if it's domestic violence, but I am very surprised that he is so caring toward her. And they're like, how? And I said, because like he won't even let her hold the baby for too long, because it's gonna be too heavy on her. And in our culture, if you're a caring husband, you do that. You take care of the baby so that your wife could rest. And in the Western world, the wife is all over the baby, and mother always comes first. But in our culture, if the husband um, he takes care of everything, then that means he's a good dad. And the mom was very sweet. Whenever I go and talk with them, they both speak to me, and they both were very loving, caring, and she was like, yeah, I don't know what they're talking about, and I don't want to talk to them. It's embarrassing because I don't know the English language, and when they talk to me, even with the interpreter, sometimes I can't even interpret right. So I just want him to talk to them instead, and I don't want to be bothered. And so they're a very sweet couple, and the baby was able to go home with them at the end too. But that's just an example of what I go through with the Hmong community, and just being there to be able to advocate and say, no, this is the norm, or this is not the norm. Because in where I live, we don't have a lot of Hmong people that will be admitted to the hospital. And the reason why I say that is because, like I always joke with my mom, the reason why I work at this hospital is because whenever it's the worst of the worst, then the community, it's if it's something simple, then they usually stay within the community hospital. And so, I really enjoy working at this hospital and teaching my peers and the interdisciplinary team about the Hmong culture, because it's very different.
Thank you for sharing that story. And I think that story really emphasized the importance of diversity, not only in healthcare, but across different fields. Because once you have somebody in the field that understands, that has similar lived experiences and that understands the culture nuances that that specific individual is going through, then they're really able to understand and advocate for them and just help others, like you mentioned, like teaching your peers, helping others around them learn more about these individuals and the different cultural nuances. So you are a very valuable part of your team. What are the challenges you face in this career and how do you overcome them?
Yeah, I think the most challenging thing about being a social worker is not being valued. I think that that is one of the biggest thing, and it's not for me. I don't like to be called out and say, "Oh, Mal, you did a good job." So I don't really care for that, but over and over again from other co-workers who are social workers, and also in the field of social worker when we study, that comes up every single time. And the reason why I say that is because you bend over backward for your patients or your clients, and at the end it's like sometimes they appreciate you, sometimes they feel like you you did nothing. And sometimes it feels like you did everything you could, but they still, the patient or the client still dislike you, and they want to fire you. They don't want you to be part of their team, because they don't agree with what you believe, not what you believe, but what you have assessed and have found to be true. Especially whenever you find that, okay, this mother or this father is not capable of caring for the child, and you have to take action and reach out to Child Protective Service. They really won't fire you at that moment because they don't want you to be involved in their case. But you also have to stand your ground, and you also have to be confident in your decision, and also be stern and be professional when you let the family or the team know why you decide what you decide to do. And you have to really have data and collect data and research everything before you make the Child Protective Service, because that is a life-changing event for the family and could be a life-changing event for the child in its future. And so it's a very scary thing for parents, and you have to explain that to parents. And the work that you do is a very challenging job. But after you're done, everybody goes, "Oh, that's social work. That's something that they do. You know, that's something that they're supposed to do." And it's true, but only those who really care will follow through. Because if you don't care, why would you go that far out to to make CPS reports or to prove that parents are not capable of caring for their child, why don't you just say, okay, yeah, the baby can go home with the mother, even though clearly you know that there is concerns of this mother or this father not capable of caring for their child. It's easy to just say, nah, they could go and not do the work. And that would be very unfortunate if any child is put in that position because the social worker did not advocate enough. But it could get to that point where the social worker is so burnt out that they don't advocate anymore. And so I think that that's the most challenging thing, is feeling that your value, and when you don't feel value and you work with challenges so much, you burn out and you just give up on your clients or your patients, and it's not fair for you and it's not for your client.
I applaud you for that. I know it can be so nerve-wracking. Well, for me, I would feel so like nervous having to talk to parents and make like life-changing decisions like that. So definitely like kudos to you for doing that on the regular. And it was not an easy task at all.
Yeah, I always joke around. I'm always like, yeah, the security guard is my best friend. And it's the reason why I say that is because a lot of time the conversation I have are so complex that they have to have security on standby because we never know when the parents are going to flip out. Sometimes I walk in with this child protective service social worker, and they come in and I go in also to let the mom know that, hey, child protective service has taken custody of your child. And that's usually when we have a lot of it just goes downhill from there. And parents usually they expect it. They knew what they're doing, and they knew why CPS have to take custody. But it's still a surprise. It is still a surprise, and it's still very, very hard to have your child taken away from you by the state. And because I don't work for the state and I work for the hospital, I still tell my mothers, I'm right here next to you. We're going to walk through this, even though they took custody of your child. What can you do to get your child back into your custody? Because the problem is there. You just have to fix that problem so that you can get your baby back or your child back. Um, and so it's always case by case, wherever that problem is. Sometimes it's substance abuse, sometimes it's housing, and the child might have very severe medical condition that cannot live outside because they live in a tent. Every situation is very different.
Our next question is asking you to describe a significant patient interaction or experience during your career that has made a lasting impact on you.
Yeah, so I have so many. And so there are times when I work with mothers who've been human trafficked, and I'll just keep it kind of broad, but um, there are a few that I worked with that were trafficked. And Charlotte, where I live, in North Carolina, is a big spot for human trafficking because of the airport. And so I get a lot of those clients or patients where I work, and it's usually a very horrific journey. And there was a time when a mother had decided to adopt her child without letting anybody know. And so it was one of those things where only me and her know, and the team that was there to care for her medically knew, and the adoption agency knew. So nobody else in her life knows that she has a child because she was trafficked and raped. And I was there to help her through the adoption process, so that she can adopt her child out. And I was very happy to hear that her child is in a very happy home, and that being loved. And so I think that was very rewarding. And again, like I say, it's just all walks of life that I deal with. And there's many, many more other stories, but I think the human trafficking ones always hit me hard.
Thank you for sharing such a vulnerable story with us. I know that can be difficult no matter how many times you see it. It's gonna feel new every time, and I'm sure that takes a toll on you. But I'm sure your patients and clients appreciate everything that you do for them. Our next question is, what unique perspectives or insight do you bring to your social work practice as a Hmong woman?
I think that because our culture is so different and the values that we put on a Hmong woman is so different from a Western woman. Um, I think that put value in because I feel like even though the work what we do is very heavy compared to my peers who are not Hmong, they have a tendency to respond quicker and while in a heated moment. Compared to me, we practice the word oshende, and so you use that a lot in this field. You have to, and you have to what they call and be patient and be patient with your patients and be patient with your client and observe before you respond. I think that is something that's very important, that I believe that it's because I'm a Hmong woman that I carried over. I think that if I was raised any differently, I would respond the same way as my coworkers.
Yeah, as they say, patience is a virtue. I think patience is definitely an important skill for everybody to have, especially in a world like, as you say, that can be so heated.
What strengths as a Hmong woman do you lean into to help you be a competent social worker?
Um, I think like earlier when I said Oshende, I think that is a very big piece of it. I feel like growing up, we've always been told to Oshende. Like they say, oh, kaya itong sa to Oshende. And you just hear that throughout your whole life. And you don't really understand it. Well, I didn't really understand it. I shouldn't say you, but I didn't really understand it until I was put in a position where I had to be. And and then I understood, and then I have to study it and get into my feelings about it and then understand why they say oshinde, because when you are patient and you observe you and you think clearly, you're able to respond better and more professional also because your feelings doesn't show even though you are so heated and so upset and so mad about the situation. You hold your composure and you respond professionally. um, and so it's very interesting that is something that I've learned to do.
I think with the work that you do, being able to work with people so closely, it does bring up a lot of emotions, whether big positive emotions or sometimes very angry, negative emotions. Having the skill and ability to be patient and Oshende will take you places for sure. Our next question here is, are there any particular challenges or successes you've encountered while advocating for Hmong clients within the social work system?
Yeah, so I think that the Hmong community, the medical field is just, I feel like it's so foreign for our Hmong community. I don't think that we trust the medical world. Um, And the reason why I say that is because if you work in the medical field and if you're Hmong and you work in the medical field, you probably understand that, okay, this is the protocol, this is what you do, this is why you have to keep the patient for this long, or this is why you have to discharge the patient in such a short period of time. And the reason why I say that is because there are times when I hear other people that is in the Hmong community will say, oh, they want that patient to stay in the hospital so they can make money off of our person or our family member. And then there are times when they're like, oh, they discharge our family member so quick because they don't want to deal with our family member, and they didn't even look thoroughly what the medical conditions are. Um, and so I hear that a lot, and I think that it's interesting. And I think that when I have Hmong patients, I help explain that piece. And I love it that because I'm Hmong and they're Hmong, they're upfront with me. Sometimes they tell me that they're like, "Are the doctors just trying to push us out? Are their doctors just trying to tell us that our baby is good so they can let us go to get another bed for another child?" I'm like, no, your baby's doing good. And I have to explain to them why. And sometimes when they stay too long, I do have to explain to them, this is why your baby is still staying here. And this is what they are working on. And they're like, I understand, but why does it take so long? And I have to explain to them what labs they're sending out and why the labs are taking so long. And sometimes they're like, well, it's so advanced now, shouldn't it come back within the hour or tomorrow? And sometimes it doesn't work that way. And so I feel like I'm kind of in the middle and explaining one thing for the Western world and explaining another thing for our Hmong world. And I'm just very, very thankful that I'm able to understand both world and help both world understand each other.
Our next question is, if you could give advice to your younger self and young Hmong girls, what would it be?
I would say don't rush yourself into a relationship and just take your time. And you're never too old to get married. You could get married when you're 50. It doesn't matter. It is your life. Don't let the elders tell you that you are in Golo, because who cares? You deserve to be independent and you deserve to just enjoy yourself and be you. And whenever whoever comes along and you're like, oh, that's my person, then go. But don't force yourself into relationships. That person might not be the right person for you. And you're putting yourself in a situation where you could have been avoided had you just not let other people around you pressure you into it. And so just be true to yourself, love yourself, and don't be pressured into getting married too soon or having kids too soon or just things too soon that you're not ready for.
I love that. Living according to your own timeline instead of the ones that others set for you. That is an important thing for all of us to remember. And something I wish I knew when I was younger too, for sure.
Same. I love that advice. Definitely especially with a lot of like what do young people call it these days? The FOMO, the fear of missing out, like people around you your age maybe getting married or having kids, but definitely like Lisa said, go with your own flow, your own timeline, and everything will be okay.
That's so true. And I always joke with my friends about this because I did not allow myself to have fun. I was so focused on school and so focused on making sure my timeline is within the timeline that my parents have put for me. They're like, by this age you should be married, by this age you should be done with your degree. And I was following a timeline. And so relax. Like us girls, we just need to relax, have fun, but just be responsible. Have fun, but be responsible. Don't let people take advantage of you.
Yes, it's a balance. Don't dive too deep.
Yeah, don't go too deep. If you go too deep, it's too hard to pull you out. So just enjoy it, but don't go too far.
Our next question here is there a Hmong proverb or saying that resonates with you personally or professionally?
I think that, and I said this earlier too, but I think it's because I really use it daily now. It's to Ocean Day, and I know that it's one of those things where our elders say it so much to where um you can be patient, but you cannot be patient all the time. And that is very true. That is very true. But if you are able to Ocean Day or you're able to be patient, you will realize the importance of it. I feel like the term Ocean Day in the professional world works because if you are patient and you are willing to listen through the problem and professionally respond, you're able to go very far because you are clear-minded. But at home, it's very different. You can't Washinde and be a mute because in our culture, when they say Washinde, they don't expect you to respond back. they expect you to be a mute. And that's not oshinde. That is basically don't say anything, but a prettier term to tell you not to say anything. And I think that the term oshinde works in the professional world, and it works when you use it correctly. But if you use it how our culture has always used it, um, like we see it on the news all the time, you be patient, you become a mute, and you don't respond, and you don't fight, you're independent. And then here comes the domestic violence cases. Here comes the cases where you can't return home because you are not accepted back. It just become a whole different topic that we go into, because of the word oshinde has been used wrong. But I feel like if it's used correctly, I think that it's a good term. And so um it it all comes down to how you interpret that term too. So
Thank you for sharing that. I just want to say that I think you're the first person to really put the phrase in a different light to be seen in, like in a professional world. So that was really nice to hear.
Yeah, I just want to echo Brittany and say that you brought up a very good point. Certain things that we're taught when we're younger, like the phrase "oshinde," when we grow up, we learn how to redefine that for ourselves. And I liked how you redefine it to a more professional perspective and use that as a strength professionally. And then you also realize, like, oh, personally, there's certain times where I can't or shouldn't they, and that's okay, like, and standing up for yourself too. So, unlearning certain things that our parents taught us and redefining what that means for us as our adult selves is important. What is one thing that you cannot go a day without as a social worker?
the one thing I cannot go without as a social worker is the support from my family and my husband. And the reason why I say that is because without them, I cannot survive with this world of social work. There's too much challenge, too much opportunity to burn out. And without them, I won't be able to do it. My mother-in-law is somebody that I go to sometime. She does some business that is very therapeutic to me whenever I'm very, very stressed. She probably doesn't know this, but whenever I'm very, very stressed, I like to hang out with my mother-in-law. Um, and my husband, he is such a good supporter. He really takes me in and take care of me. My mom is somebody that I can just call and talk to and tell her everything, along with my sisters and my sister-in-law. So I am very fortunate to have a very, very supportive system in my background, in order to be a good social worker for my family, at the hospital or at the clinical place. Because without the strong support at home, I won't be able to be a good social worker.
So that kind of relates to our next question here. Outside of work, how do you unwind and practice self-care when you are feeling so stressed from your day as a social worker?
Yeah, so for me, I think that me and my husband, we do a really good job at checking in on each other. And I think that that's something that is very healthy for any couple, is checking in on how each other is doing. Sometimes we're fine, sometimes we're good, sometimes we have really bad days, and we allow each other to just vent, even though we don't even know what they're talking about. And so just allowing each other talk about their day and how they're feeling. And so I think that is very important, and making sure that you take care of yourself when you find that you are starting to have tension on your shoulder, you're starting to have stress, you're starting to have your nights, you're starting to wake up in the middle of the night when you usually sleep through the whole night. Start noticing your body is stressing. It's important. And voicing that to your partner or your family member or whoever that is your support system. I think another very important thing that me and my husband does is we make sure that we have time for family, and we also make sure we have time for friends. And a lot of time in our Hmong culture, when you have time for family, you don't have time for friends, and when you have time for friends, you don't have time for family. But I feel like me and my husband, we try our best to make sure that we are able to do that. I think we try to see our friends at least three once every 3 months because after college you don't see each other anymore, you just have lives. But we make sure to see each other and check in with each other throughout the year. And then for our family, we do our best to see them weekly, or to spend some time with them. And even like for me, like even if I just go and sit down with my mother-in-law for 5 minutes and just to say, hey, how are you doing, that makes me feel good because I'm able to talk to her and check in on her. She probably was just like, oh, why is Nya talking to me? And then she just laughed. What is she doing? But for me, I like to talk to the elders, and I like to just check in and see how they're doing. And those little things matters to me and makes me feel good. And so I think that if you recognize this, what makes you feel good and what makes you feel at peace, and you take the initiative to do that, you also could continue to care for yourself, even if it's just like a 5-minute conversation or something that is only taking like a minute to do.
Thank you for sharing. You bring up such good points that it's important to listen to your body, first of all, because a lot of times our body tells us how we're feeling. We may not even realize it mentally yet, but our body will tell us how tired we really are. And bringing up the point that it can just be something small and simple that kind of pivots your mindset or shifts you away from the stress and the long days. And so thank you for that reminder. I need to remember that for myself too. Like whenever I'm stressed, just something simple that would help me relax and for me to find that time to just connect with that. So we are reaching the end of our questions. These are our closing questions. They're just some more fun questions to pick your brain a little bit. Our first one here is, if you could choose to be any superhero sidekick, who would you be and why?
It's hard for me to determine which superhero I want to be because um I I guess I never really thought about what superhero power I really want, because I feel like everything that I want as a human being and I want to become, I am capable of getting there if I work hard enough. I would say I do like the villains in most of them, and the reason why I say that is because every villain has a story, and we always share light, shine light on the princesses or the superhero, and we don't ever listen to the villain story. And so Megamind, I don't know if you guys watch Megamind, but that is my favorite show, movie, and could watch it over and over again because he's a villain and he has a heart. And so I guess I don't have a superhero, I just have villains.
Thank you for bringing in a different perspective because, like you shared, a lot of times these villains' origin stories goes unnoticed, and a lot of times, I think for Megamind, he actually turns good. I think after the first movie, like he actually turns good and
Yes.
starts doing like good deeds.
Yeah. She just needs some lovings. That's what it is. I
Yes,
feel like every villain just needs that extra love.
exactly. Someone to just understand them, take the time. Yes. So that actually ties into our last question, which was if you could have any superhero power, what would it be and why? How would you use that superhero power?
So superpower, because I don't really know what superpower, because I would overthink all of superpower. I guess if I could, I would sprinkle on love on the unloved. And the reason why I say that is because there's a lot of people out there that are broken, and I really wish that I have the power to show them that you are more than what you think you are. And it's very, very hard to change that mindset when you are there. And when you think so lowly of yourself, nobody could change that except you. And I wish I had that power to be like, hey, this is a picture of you, and this is what you actually really, really look like. And this is why you're so strong and you're so amazing. But we as human beings can say that to somebody over and over again, and if they don't see their worth, they're not going to see their worth. And I wish I had the power to change that.
Well, thank you for sharing. I love that. I can definitely see you with like healing superpowers, just healing everybody.
We do need a lot more love in the world for sure. And a lot of times we are our own hardest critics and worst critics. So if we had someone like Mal spreading the superpower of love everywhere, what an amazing world it will be.
Yeah, I call them out love. Sprinkle there.
That's great. I love that. Those were all the questions we had for today. Just want to say thank you again to Mao for being here, and to our listeners for tuning in and getting to know more about Mao and the social work profession. Here on our last slide, we do have Mao's email and her phone number if you want to contact her with additional questions that you may have. We've also added a link to the North Carolina Hmong Women Association webpage and our Facebook, where we will be posting the webinars and other information on different programs that we're having. On the right side of the slide, you can also see the flyer for the Hmong Women Led summit that I talked about earlier in today's presentation. Again, just want to reiterate that it is a free summit, 2-day summit, June 8th and June 9th in Colorado. And it's really just a time for Hmong women to get together, talk about mental health, go through various workshops, have different conversations about mental health and how we as a community can work together to create a better space for Hmong women in general in regards to mental matters. So thank you again, Mao, and thank you to Brittany for being here. And I will let you guys both say a few words if you would like.
Thank you so much, Mel, for joining us and for giving us your time. And thank you, Lisa, for leading this webinar. And I just want to say, it's so amazing, like the work you do. And I just want to encourage you to continue to keep up the good work. And thank you again so much.
Yes, I also want to piggyback on this. So Lisa, you did an amazing job reaching out and organizing this and putting it together. And also Brittany, thank you so much for also being part of this. And you guys are both doing amazing work, especially because we don't have enough of this. We don't have enough of us Hmong women out there and to speak and to make what is not normal and in our community, and to make their normal not normal, because there are a lot of unhealthy things that we think that is normal in the Hmong community that needs to be changed, and there's a lot of things in the Hmong community that it's really not the norm that needs to kind of stick, because we need change in our community. We come from the mountains and now we are here in the city. And so we are slowly changing. And I believe that our Hmong community is very strong. And we are able to, this is just a barrier that we all will eventually go over the hump together. And there are many, many great things that our Hmong people have done. And you guys are doing it here now too. Also doing it by having these webinars and calling all Hmong women to come and support each other and be here for each other, and even just to reach out and help each other educate about each other's field. I think that is amazing. So thank you for all you guys do.
Thank you for your encouraging, uplifting words. It really feels great to know that we are making an impact. So again, thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And with that, we will close out today's webinar.